I'll move it a little bit closer to the locomotive so we get a little more realistic number. But it looks to me like it's dropping all the way down to 8 volts over the other side underneath the bears. See, it's down to 8.4, 8.3. Well, it kind of confirms what we already know. There's a noticeable voltage drop over by the bears. I don't know why, though, because there's a feed right there. So maybe what's happened is the dogs go underneath the table and knock that feed off or something. But handy little device. So I got both video from this camera, and also once I saw it was going down, I brought the phone camera over so we could verify what we were looking at. So good. One of the things that's happened over the years is as I go and try to get information, to fill in blanks in videos, I go back to some of the old books that I've had for, I'm thinking, decades. This one's one. And there's just lots of good information in these. And they may not be slick like the videos and stuff like that, but my God, they're snapshots of history. And for me, answer a lot of questions for me when I have a little question on things like scale, or did train masters ever pull freight? The FM Fairbanks Morse train masters. And you page through these books, and a lot of those answers are in the pictures of things that happened, and had somebody with a camera close by to document that for history. And this is one of my favorites, this book right here. And he's famous, obviously, in the railroad community. And these are all black and white pictures, and they're pictures of the era, which is actually interesting to me too. And it tells you right in here somewhere. There. 1950 to 1960. Well, what's interesting to me is obviously the 50s, but also all the way up into the 70s, because that's when I lived my life as a young fella. And if you can find these books, if you're a railroad, either a modeler or rail fan or hobbyist of any kind, usually they don't go for very much money. Time has passed them by, I think, in format, which is a darn shame. But what I can tell you is, like I said, they can answer lots and lots of questions and give you inspiration. In today's video, here's another one. I found a bunch of these old railroad magazines. I got them for nothing. And catalogs, the K-Line catalog. Oh man, I went through this catalog here, and it kind of reminds me of that Monty Python skit about spam, spam, spam. Well, they made just a couple of different shells and locomotives, and pretty much everything in the catalog is a variation of that theme. You had those switchers, the Alco FAs, but also the S2s, I think, in here somewhere. Just different colors of the same train over and over and over. But it's fun. But what I want to get into today a little bit is scale. Again. And, oh yeah, another big thing I kind of figured out from that book is, unlike diesels, where the height of the diesels were a little more standard even amongst brands, steam locomotives not so. There's big ones, there's small ones, there's long ones, there's short ones. So trying to figure out what the right scale is can be, not quite as straightforward as you might think, because not every tender or locomotive has that height relative to, say, a passenger car. They kind of came in all different sizes and shapes. And of course, with the ones I have, trying to match up their scale with cars and make it look, fun to run. Yeah, sometimes you just got to take what you got and have some compromises. That's a little bit big. That should be a little bit bigger. But the thing I found surprising is these weren't as big relative to the locomotives as I thought they were. And I have a couple of pictures for evidence. And actually, I used to think that they matched up good with these 027s, right? But I was wrong. They really matched up better with the larger semi-scale Lionels. So one of the things I've been kind of struggling with is scale, right? And most of these Lionel are arguably not to scale, right? We like to call them sort of semi-scale or even 027. Certainly not scale O. And this generation of Lionel steam locomotive is, in my mind, getting close to O scale. And these are, in my mind, 027. So I always assumed these Lehigh Valley cars I got were more of the 027 scale and would fit better behind something like one of these. And then I started looking at pictures, and pictures after pictures after pictures after pictures from old railroad magazine and, picture books and stuff like that. And what I found was, especially with the larger tenders, the height of the back in the pictures was taller than the coal hoppers. And some of them were actually wider too. I don't think they were that much wider, but still. So from the side view, that really is not that far off. And that's a bit of a surprise to me. And neither are these to this locomotive. And they're actually a little bit big for this one, because I cannot find a picture with the old steam freight locomotives where the top of the coal cars of the time were taller than the tenders like they would be with this one right here. So I don't know if that's confusing for me, but it's a little clarifying. Now, obviously, nothing here is true scale, right? This is all, Lionel based, more for toy than anything else. But I did think it was an interesting little side note to note that it's not that far off. Not really. And I'll drop a couple of pictures in for pictorial evidence. So let me put another couple of, let's do a lap. We got to run the train, right? You can't do this without running train. We'll do a lap. So the takeaway is these are not as far out of whack as I had originally thought. So let me put another one up there, and you can compare for yourself. And again, I'm looking at that as much as anything. And I'm going to argue that based on the pictures, that locomotive tender is actually small relative to those cars. 2055. Now, I would have said prior to looking at the pictures in the magazines that that's a lot closer to matching what these are, one relative to the other on those old trains. You know, the width was here, the car was a little taller. But like I said, I have yet to find a picture where the hoppers were any taller than that back section of the tender. So let me see if I can find another tender that might be maybe a better match. How about that one? See, that's a little better for me. But still, when you look at the pictures, the locomotive looks small relative to the size of the cars. So really, with these lay-high valleys, to match up with the pictures I have in those historical publications, that one down there is probably the one closest to scale. But I like these anyway. But what if I put on one of those true 027 locomotives? Again, in the past, I would have thought that matched up better, but it's even further out of whack. I'll get one of those. Yeah, see, that's actually pretty small. It's not that much bigger than the car itself. And again, I'll put in some of the pictures. That's pretty cool. We put a new smoker in that one. So, as much as I like them, and I'm going to run them, because I don't care so much about scale, I do want to point out that that locomotive is small by quite a bit relative to that tender, and small relative to these cars as well. So what about a scale O SD45? Well, yeah, it's a little bit bigger. These are a little small. But again, maybe not as far off as I would have anticipated just, a couple weeks back before I started looking at pictures. But, yeah, it's a little big. Or those are a little small. Maybe what I need to do is to get some good MTH scale O cars, to match up with this locomotive. But also get a comparison on these. But for now, I'm going to have fun with these Lionels. I call them semi-scale because I don't think they're really scaled to much anything. But they do match up well with that steam locomotive. They're a little bit too big for these, a little bit too small for these. They kind of sit right there in the middle. So, just some observations.